When my uncle caught me indulging in self-play, this happened a true infidelity story. Picture the instant your uncle enters and discovers you in the most personal act conceivable. What comes next? A moment of uncomfortable stillness? A tense exchange? You won't believe how everything unraveled when my uncle walked in on me. It all started with the gentle sunlight streaming through the trees outside my Uncle Tom's house, casting golden streaks across the floor. I found myself facing the full-length mirror in the guest room, the very one I had always steered clear of during my visits, primarily due to my aversion to self-reflection. Yet today, an unusual sensation lingered in the air. I had been visiting my uncle's home for years, seeking refuge from the clamor of my life in the city. Yet this moment carried a distinct essence. Perhaps it was due to the fact that I had changed in some way. I hadn't intended to linger there for so long, yet I found myself unable to pull away. There was this peculiar sensation within me, as if I was truly witnessing my own essence for the very first time, genuinely perceiving myself. The girl in the mirror appeared simultaneously known and foreign, as if she were someone I had seen before, yet couldn't fully identify. I found myself in a liminal space, caught between the innocence of youth and the responsibilities of adulthood. I approached the mirror, scrutinizing my reflection. I had recently celebrated my 17th birthday, and I could already sense the transformations unfolding within me. My face had taken on a fuller appearance, my features now exuding a softer quality. My body, oh how it has transformed so significantly over the past year. My hips had a fuller shape. My waist was more defined, and I began to realize that I carried myself in a different way, exuding more confidence. I ran my fingers through my hair, feeling the strands glide beneath my touch. It had grown longer, cascading just past my shoulders, and it possessed a natural wave that eluded my attempts at control. Yet today, it appeared nearly elegant in the way it outlined my features. I found myself uncertain about when it occurred, yet I began to appreciate my appearance. I couldn't recall a moment when I wasn't aware of my appearance, but something within me had transformed, and now I was beginning to embrace the changes. I tilted my head, allowing the gentle light from the window to caress my skin. A warmth lingered in the air. A warmth I had never truly acknowledged until now. It felt like I was finally becoming at ease with myself, and for the first time, I embraced that feeling. I glided my hand along my arm, sensing the sleekness of my skin, the warmth that lay beneath it. I was no longer just a girl. I was transforming into someone new, someone I could take pride in. Just as I was about to turn away from the mirror, the sound of footsteps behind me caught my attention. I froze, my heart racing in my throat, and I turned around swiftly. In the doorway stood my uncle. I was unaware of his arrival. He stood there, arms casually crossed, his dark eyes fixed on me in a way that made my breath hitch. It wasn't the familiar gaze he usually directed my way, one of a protective uncle. This was something entirely different, a new intensity in his look that sent a shiver down my spine. I swiftly lowered my gaze, a wave of warmth flooding my cheeks. "Oh, I didn't hear you knock," I stammered, stepping away from the mirror and shifting my weight, feeling a flutter of nerves. My heart raced more than usual, and I found myself unable to grasp the reason behind it. He smiled, yet there was a subtle tension in it, as if he were caught in a dilemma between speaking up or allowing the moment to drift away. "It's fine," he said, his voice soft, his eyes lingering on me. "I simply wasn't certain if you caught what I said." I apologize for the interruption. I nodded, attempting to dismiss the rapid beating of my heart. There was an undeniable quality about him that consistently stirred a delightful unease within me. He had transformed in my perception. He was no longer merely my uncle. Instead, he was evolving into something more complex, and I found myself uncertain about whether I was prepared to confront that reality just yet. His youthful good looks and attractive features always sparked something within me. I inhaled deeply, attempting to soothe the restless beating in my chest. "I didn't interrupt," I said, the words feeling awkward on my tongue. I was simply observing my reflection. It felt absurd, even as the words left my lips. Who gazes into a mirror and simply observes their reflection? Yet, today held a quality that made it seem as if I was encountering my own reflection for the very first time. Tom pushed off from the doorframe and stepped toward me, his gaze still fixed on mine. He stood so close now, his presence enveloping the space between us. My breath caught in my throat once more, and I sensed the heat rising on my skin. I shifted awkwardly. Yet he appeared oblivious to my discomfort. "You look different," he remarked, his tone soft yet unmistakably clear. I blinked, uncertain of how to reply. "What do you mean by that?" I inquired, a warm blush creeping further across my cheeks. "I don't know," he said, stepping a bit closer. "There's something about you, it's just something. You seem to have matured, transforming into a stronger version of yourself." His words seemed to penetrate deep within me, leaving me momentarily at a loss for how to respond. No one had ever truly expressed anything quite like that to me before that I was unsure how to process it, yet it brought a sense of satisfaction that I felt authentic, as if I was beginning to perceive myself through the eyes of others. "I suppose I am," I replied quietly, a small smile playing on my lips as I cast my gaze downward, attempting to mask the anxiety that was slowly rising within me. I had been evolving in various aspects. A lengthy silence enveloped us, and I sensed his eyes fixed upon me. I kept my gaze fixed on the floor, feeling a wave of uncertainty wash over me once more. What was it about the way he was gazing at me? It felt as if I had ceased to be his niece, as though he was encountering me anew, for the very first time. "I believe it suits you," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You appear quite impressive." I swallowed, a rush of heat flooding my face, and my heart raced, and for a fleeting moment, uncertainty washed over me. Was he merely being considerate, or was there a deeper meaning behind his words? Before I could respond, he took a step back, creating some distance, as if he suddenly understood how near he had come. He cleared his throat, running a hand through his hair, and I could tell he was a bit flustered now as well. "Well," he remarked with a subtle smile, his tone lifting once more. "I'll let you carry on. Hello there." I nodded quickly, experiencing a blend of relief and disappointment as he turned and exited the room. I lingered for a moment longer, enveloped in the warmth of his words, recalling the way he had gazed at me. There was an undeniable quality to it, something that sent my heart racing and my thoughts whirling. Perhaps I wasn't merely transforming on the surface. Perhaps something was evolving within me as well. He offered a subtle, nearly melancholic smile. "Thank you," he expressed, his tone brimming with appreciation. "That signifies more than you realize." For a moment we simply stood there, the silence enveloping us, weighty yet oddly reassuring. It felt as though in that fleeting moment we reached an unvoiced agreement, a shared acknowledgement of the limits we had both navigated, and yet, there remained an unresolved tension, an impression that we were balancing on the brink of something elusive and undefined. As he turned to leave, he paused in the doorway, casting a glance back at me with an expression that eluded my understanding. It was a gaze filled with openness, a hint of reliance, yet laced with wariness, as though he were signaling me to proceed with care. In that instant I understood that whatever existed between us, despite the secrets we had uncovered, an abundance of untold stories lingered in the air. I understood that this was just the beginning, that the questions swirling in my mind would not be easily resolved. But for now, all I could do was wait, allowing the tension to simmer, and hope that in time, the truth will come to light. The subsequent days carried a distinct quality, infused with an energy that eluded my understanding. Each encounter with my uncle held a delicate tension, an emotion that had previously been missing. Prior to our late-night discussion in my room, a pastime we frequently enjoyed during my younger days, he claimed it was for some fresh air, yet I could feel there was something deeper at play. His tone carried a hint of thrill, as if he were inviting me into a realm he'd long kept concealed. The sun dipped below the horizon as we navigated the twisting backroads, the golden light enveloping the fields in a soft, warm embrace. A peculiar tranquility enveloped me in his presence, a sense of belonging that had eluded me for far too long. The quiet that enveloped us felt at ease, broken only by the gentle purr of the engine and the sporadic whisper of the trees as we glided by. Eventually, he stopped by a small clearing, one we had often frequented years ago. He reclined against the car's hood, his eyes wandering as he stared into the distance. Lost in thought while gazing at the horizon, I joined him, sensing the comforting heat of the metal below me. The intimacy we shared was both soothing and in a way electrifying. "Do you recall? Is this the spot?" he inquired, his voice gentle. Indeed, I responded with a grin. You used to take me here frequently. Claimed it was your hidden retreat. He let out a soft laugh, giving a nod. Certain aspects remain constant. We lingered there, observing the sun descend beneath the horizon. As the sky transformed into a canvas of orange and pink hues, the warmth emanated from him, his presence both familiar and grounding, and yet, there was an uncharted territory, an unvoiced connection hanging in the air between us. After a moment he turned to me, his expression gentler than I had ever witnessed. That I'm truly happy that you're here. It has been some time since I felt truly understood. The word struck me unexpectedly, and I felt compelled to reach out, resting my hand on his arm. That I'm pleased to be here as well, I murmured softly. I've longed for this, longed for us. He glanced at my hand, a subtle smile tugging at the edges of his lips. That I in a moment that felt both instinctive and dreamlike, he leaned in. His face just inches from mine. We were unable to restrain ourselves, and all that transpired between us was beyond our control. Our bodies intertwined, embracing one another in a manner that seemed destined. That I sensed his breath, warm and steady, and before I realized it, our lips connected in a gentle, tender kiss. That it was soft, imbued with a silent comprehension, a warmth that appeared to permeate every fiber of my existence. For a moment, time appeared to freeze, the surroundings dissolving until it was just the two of us, ensnared in that ephemeral, exquisite instant. That it wasn't hurried or forced. It was a gentle, authentic reflection of the bond we had developed, a connection that felt simultaneously fresh and familiar. As we finally drew away, he regarded me with a blend of astonishment and something more profound, something unshielded. I don't know what came over me, he murmured. As though taking in the significance of my words perhaps, he repeated, his gaze probing mine, imbued with a subtle intensity that rendered me breathless. We lingered there, shoulder to shoulder, the quiet surrounding us both soothing and electric. We were all adrift in our individual musings. The atmosphere was laden with a profound sense of connection, a tie that seemed more profound than anything I had ever experienced. In that moment, it felt as though we had crossed an unseen boundary, one that neither of us could or would ever return from. As the stars started to appear, he grasped my hand, offering a soft squeeze. Silence enveloped us, an unspoken understanding that required no elaboration on our emotions. All that needed to be expressed was captured in that uncomplicated gesture, a warmth that communicated so much. At long last we found our way back to the car. The journey back was enveloped in a soothing quiet, as we each reveled in the warmth of that collective experience. A new sense of closeness enveloped us, an understanding that transcended mere words. It felt like we had discovered a hidden aspect of ourselves we hadn't known existed, a part that had been anticipating this moment all along. Upon our return to the house, he paused for a moment, his eyes locking with mine, revealing a gentle, nearly fragile emotion. Thank you, he murmured softly, for this evening, for all that has transpired. I nodded, a smile playing at the corners of my mouth. At any moment, that night as I lay in bed, I reflected on the evening in my mind. The recollection of his warmth, his proximity, remains vivid. It was an indescribable sensation, a blend of tranquility and exhilaration, a realization that something beautiful had begun to flourish between us, something destined to deepen and strengthen as time went on. The days that followed were rich with serene instances, moments that resonated more profoundly than any words could convey. We exchanged fleeting looks from across the room, our fingers brushing in a way that was both instinctive and electrifying. It felt like we were both twirling around a silent truth, a bond that was as undeniable as it was surprising. One afternoon, while we were collaborating on a project in the garage, he gently brushed a stray lock of hair from my face, his touch lingering for just a second longer than necessary. I looked up, meeting his gaze, and in that moment I felt a surge of warmth, a sense of belonging that left me both comforted and exhilarated. Without hesitation I leaned in, placing a gentle kiss on his cheek. He looked at me, surprise flickering in his eyes, but then he smiled, a warmth in his gaze that made my heart flutter. Thank you, he whispered, his voice brimming with appreciation. For what purpose? For your presence, for your comprehension. I sensed the gravity of his words, the intensity of his emotions, and I was certain that this was genuine, That what we had was something unique and exquisite, that it wasn't merely a passing instance. It marked the dawn of something that would mold us in ways we were yet to grasp. With each passing week our connection deepened. Every day brimmed with serene instances of comfort and mutual comprehension. It was a bond that transcended language, an emotion that echoed in each gaze, every caress and every exchanged smile. And even though I was uncertain about where this path would take us, I felt that I was precisely where I needed to be. It was destined to be, that I had discovered something genuinely extraordinary, something that would remain with me regardless of where life led us. It was finally time for the hiking trip we had been dreaming about for years. The sun began its descent, casting a warm glow across the sky, blending shades of pink and orange as we perched on the cliff's edge, gazing down at the valley below. The breeze was cool yet gentle, the sort that awakens a sense of vitality and presence within you. The evening unfolded beautifully, and I found it hard to believe we were here together, just the two of us, far removed from the world around us. I couldn't overlook the reality that there was something deeper between us than merely the bond between an uncle and his niece. And sitting here with nothing but the wind, the silence, and the endless sky between us, I could feel it in every glance, every sigh mile we shared. "Wow," Tom murmured, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper as he gazed out over the landscape. "This is astonishing." I nodded, my gaze following the contours of the hills extending before us. The expanse of the world unfolded beneath me. Yet in this moment, everything felt remarkably close, almost intimate. Indeed it is. Incredible. I can hardly believe we've finally arrived at this moment. For months we had been discussing this trip, meticulously planning every detail, our accommodations, the trails we would hike, and even the songs that would accompany us on the drive. And now here we were. The reality of it felt otherworldly. Uncle Tom turned toward me, a subtle smile dancing on his lips. "I'm pleased we took this step. That I do not. I believe I would have found the strength to arrive by myself." His eyes locked onto mine, and I knew he was sincere. Tom was the vibrant spirit of every gathering, the one who brought laughter and made everyone feel comfortable. In moments like this, I glimpsed a side of him that was rarely revealed, one that was quiet, contemplative, and a touch more earnest. It was difficult to envision him as anything other than self-assured, yet I understood there were facets of him that remained concealed. "I'm pleased we're here as well," I murmured gently. "This was essential for me. I've been incredibly occupied with all sorts of things recently that it's refreshing to take a break and step away for a bit." The words lingered in the air for a moment, and then Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand that. At times, life can feel incredibly overwhelming." I curled inward, drawing my knees close to my chest while enveloping them with my arms. It felt welcoming here, as if I could express thoughts I typically kept to myself, ideas that had been swirling in my mind for some time but hadn't found the perfect moment to share. "I sense that transformations are unfolding," I confessed, my tone softer now. "Feels as though I'm transforming. I can't quite put it into words, but there's this sense that I'm on the brink of a new discovery, as if I'm uncovering my true self." He gazed at me for an extended moment, his look soft and tender. "You're not the only one feeling that way. I share your sentiments. It's strange, don't you think? One moment, you find yourself as one individual, and the next you've transformed into someone entirely new." His words carried a depth of understanding that caused my heart to swell just a bit. He wasn't merely speaking to occupy the quiet. He was truly attentive, and that changed everything. "It seems we're both navigating this journey," I remarked with a gentle smile. "However, it's pleasant to have someone who understands it." His smile grew wider, and I noticed a spark in his eyes, something that resonated with me yet felt refreshingly different. "I'm truly happy to be here with you. You have consistently been a person I can confide in." The manner in which he expressed it made me feel acknowledged in a way I had not completely grasped before. I always believed we were merely two individuals who crossed paths, sharing a handful of laughs and rare profound discussions. However, this journey had transformed something within. It felt as though we were perceiving one another through a new lens, transcending the boundaries of mere friendship and evolving into something more profound. Additional. "I'm pleased you're here as well," I remarked, meeting his gaze directly this time. There was something in his eyes. The hat made my heart flutter, and for a moment, I pondered whether he could sense the same shift between us. This trip is truly the best decision we've made. It feels as though we are embarking on a fresh journey. The quiet that enveloped us felt at ease now, rather than the awkwardness I had anticipated. It felt as though we were both reflecting on everything we had expressed and experienced, allowing it to linger within us before addressing once more. Uncle Tom was the first to shatter the stillness, his voice softer than before, almost uncertain. Have you ever contemplated what lies ahead? His question took me by surprise. It was a surprise to hear, yet it felt like precisely the sort of question I had been pondering myself. The future loomed as a vast enigma, and I found myself pondering it endlessly. Where it might lead me. I ponder it constantly, I admitted, a bit more candidly than I had planned. However, the more I contemplate it, the more I sense that I don't have everything completely sorted. I am uncertain where I am headed or who I will become. I simply feel a strong desire to fully embrace the time I have at this moment. He nodded, his gaze contemplative. Absolutely, I understand. It feels as though there's this expectation for us to have everything meticulously organized, yet the reality is that we're simply navigating through each day as it comes. I smiled, experiencing a wave of relief in his words. It was comforting to realize that another person shared the same feelings of uncertainty and doubt about what lies ahead. It gave me a sense of companionship in my reflections. I suppose we're all just navigating our paths, I remarked with a touch more assurance this time. Perhaps it's unnecessary for us to have everything completely sorted. Perhaps it's perfectly fine to approach things one step at a time. He smiled back, the burden of his words easing as he let out a soft chuckle. Perhaps it's not essential for us to have all the answers, however. I believe we are both managing quite well up to this point. Chuckled. The sound airy and unburdened. I agree with that sentiment. His words carried a certain warmth, a quality that enveloped me in a comforting embrace. It wasn't merely a casual remark. It was in the way he gazed at me, the way he made me feel significant. In that instant, perched on the edge of that cliff with him, I came to understand that perhaps, just perhaps, he was the kind of person who would stand by me amid all the uncertainty, through every shift and transformation. And perhaps for the first time, I found myself at ease with not possessing all the answers. The sky had taken on a deeper hue, and the stars were starting to shimmer overhead. It was serene, and for an extended period, neither of us uttered a word. We simply sat there, side by side, allowing the stillness of the world to envelop us. At last I faced him, my voice gentle yet unwavering. Thanks, Tom, for being present, for everything that has unfolded. He glanced my way, a gentle and sincere smile gracing his lips. Any moment. I'm delighted that we're sharing this moment together. In that moment, I realized that this trip, this evening, this time spent with him transcended the beautiful view or the thrill of adventure. The essence lay in the connection we shared. The bond that had developed between us as time passed. As we sat side by side, observing the stars emerge one by one, a profound tranquility washed over me, reassuring me that regardless of what lay ahead, we would confront it together. In the days that followed our silent, unvoiced moment, a fresh cadence wove itself into the fabric of our lives. It felt like we uncovered a concealed dimension to our bond, one that we both acknowledged but decided to allow to develop gradually, at its own rhythm. There were no grand declarations or obvious shifts in our routine, but an unspoken understanding wove itself into our conversations, our shared glances, the way we seemed to gravitate toward each other every now and then. He would catch me with a quiet smile, and my heart would race in a way that felt both exhilarating and grounding. Our lives unfolded, defined by comforting routines and serene moments, yet each one seemed somehow more vivid, more full of life. Our closeness seemed to provide a fresh perspective, allowing us to perceive the world in a way that made everything feel more vibrant and significant. One evening, we found ourselves gathered on the back porch. The gentle murmur of crickets permeated the atmosphere. The sky glimmered in rich indigo hues, a sprinkle of stars twinkling overhead, while the gentle summer breeze enveloped us in tranquility. We engaged in a conversation that danced between the profound and the trivial, our voices soft as we exchanged tales, aspirations, and gentle musings. I've always loved it here, he whispered, his eyes locked on the stars above. There's an undeniable essence to this location. It feels as though it possesses a spirit all its own. I nodded, sensing the profound bond with the space. With the memories it contained, that it truly feels like home. I responded, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. He glanced my way, his expression gently illuminated by the soft glow of the dim light. You're an essential element in creating that feeling. The words lingered, imbued with a sincerity that struck a profound chord. A gentle warmth enveloped me, accompanied by a profound gratitude that eluded my attempts to articulate. His words carried an undeniable weight, a depth of feeling that transcended anything I had ever experienced. At that instant, a memory surged forth, one from many years past, when I was merely a child. He had introduced me to fishing for the first time, carefully guiding me through the process of baiting the hook, casting the line, and patiently waiting for a bite. That I had been restless, yearning for a change to unfold. He imparted to me the significance of patience, of relishing the serene pauses that lie in between. And here we were years later, still discovering from one another, still cherishing the serene pauses that filled the gaps between our expressions. As the night deepened, we sat there side by side, a cozy silence wrapping around us. His hand brushed against mine, a gentle, unpretentious gesture that was at once familiar and yet refreshingly new. I glanced at him, our eyes locking, and in that moment, all else disappeared. It was merely the two of us, intertwined by a bond that eluded any attempt at explanation. Our hands intertwined, fingers lacing together in a manner that felt both instinctive and deeply meaningful. I rested my head on his shoulder, sensing the rhythmic rise and fall of his breath, the warmth of his presence anchoring me in a way I had never experienced before. Words were unnecessary to convey the connection that existed between us. In that serene intimacy, in the seamless connection of our hands, in the silent comprehension that deepened with every fleeting second. Eventually he turned to face me, his eyes holding a softness that made my heart skip a beat. I don't know where this is going, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. However, I am eager to discover. I nodded, a smile playing at the corners of my mouth. Same here with that. It felt as though a burden had been released, as if we had finally recognized the journey we had been traversing side by side. There was no urgency, no requirement to categorize or label what we shared. It was sufficient to allow it to unfold naturally, to let each moment serve as a testament to the bond we had created. The days stretched into weeks, each one woven with subtle, serene moments that formed the tapestry of our existence. We would embark on lengthy journeys, navigating the twisting paths that unfurled like ribbons across in the countryside. We share laughter and stories as we journeyed together. Evenings would find us in the kitchen, cooking side by side, our movements flowing together in a manner that felt both effortless and genuine. And in those moments I experienced a profound sense of belonging that transcended language, a feeling that I was precisely where I was destined to be. One morning, as I sat by the window watching the first light of dawn break across the sky, I felt a sense of tranquility envelop me. It was a gentle, unpretentious tranquility, one that arose from understanding.